and welcome to our webcast. We're going to be talking about preparations for our startup schools. I'm Amy Siegel, and I'm the Vice President here at ASA.
And I'm Tina Wiseman, your School Support Specialist and Strategic Planning Person.
And we're going to turn off our cameras and just jump right in. Okay, so really important that you're working in order right now. If you haven't watched the intervention videos before this, you can get the links to those videos in the description below. You want to make sure you do your intervention tasks because that's kind of setting you up for the steps we're going to talk about in this video. So if you haven't done your intervention work, that initial setup, go back and do those and then come to this one. So our point positions responsible for work this month, we're really relying on that intervention development point person to facilitate the selection, development, and online entry of our interventions, and that includes this step, the preparations. So of course, it's not just about that person. Everybody needs to pitch in and help and make sure that this gets completed successfully.
So the idea is now that all of your interventions and your crosswalks have met criteria. And so now you've learned a lot about this whole process. So obviously the next logical step is you're going to be going into preparations. Preparations for implementation helps you plan out everything that you'll need to be done, that will need to be done to implement your interventions with integrity. Remember, you've got to have the backup with a good plan. And the elements of that preparation are, you always want to have, or in most cases, an evaluation of how it's going. Always look for professional development if anything's needed. Get people equipped. If you need resource securement, make sure that that's in place, as well as funding securement. And then sometimes, even after all that, there may be some other tasks. So we give you the tools that you can put all of that information in one place. Okay, the first thing that you'll want to be doing is doing an evaluation. And so you'll want to prepare that. So no evaluation will thrive without those timely checks on how well it's doing. And these are the parts of the evaluation that you'll be filling out. Remember, you're always changing the adult group that's involved with an intervention. So in this case, the adults must do something different before anything can change for the kids. So which adults will be asked to change involving this specific intervention that you're talking about? So remember, it can be teachers, it can be community people, whatever the intervention is wanting to do, wanting to accomplish. Then we ask, what practice is this intervention trying to bring about in this adult group? So what are the adults going to do differently to help drive data and make this intervention successful? What will you count to determine the degree to which this practice exists? You can use a number of adults or you can use a percentage, whichever you prefer. You'll have baseline data date when you collect the baseline data. You'll also have the actual data. What is that data before you start the intervention? Then you'll have an evaluation date, and we highly suggest that you use March 1st or thereabout as an evaluation date. That will give you time to evaluate the intervention prior to establishing interventions for the coming school year. So that gives you that time frame of when you'll be working on interventions for the following year. You'll have target data, and remember, this is just a reasonable expectation of the change for the data, and then the person's name who will collect that follow-up data. And here's the evaluation rubric that I'll be looking for, the different elements of it. I'll make sure that the evaluation identifies the targeted adult group, that it identifies what will be counted to determine if the adults have implemented the intervention fully and with integrity. There will be baseline date and data present. There'll be evaluation date, and the target data will be present. So it's very straightforward. Just fill out all those items. And remember, adult group, not kids. That's the main thing.
Let's take a look at this online. So we are down here. This is our interventions. Oh, let me refresh this because we have our post-discussion tasks have all met criteria, and that is necessary before we move on to preparation. So you'll be watching the steering team video that we're recording right now. You'll read the professional development planning guide, and then down here is where we work on preparations. So we're going to click the Enter Edit, and I have one entered. I have one started. Yours will you'll probably just have a place. I'm sorry, you'll have your list of the interventions that you created in your last set of work. And so we'll just go ahead to the enter for our one intervention. Of course, you'll have more. So our intervention is a new attendance policy. Which adult group is this intervention designed to impact? Let's say in this case, it's parents. And what practice is this intervention trying to bring about in the adult group? Send kids to school more. We'll look at what will count to determine the degree to which this practice exists, percent of parents who send kids to school with fewer than 10 absences. And our baseline date, we'll say, is, well, this is in 2018, so that's no good. We'll skip ahead because we need to at least get into 2019. We will say that we're collecting our data today and put in our baseline data. Pretend that's 87. And our follow-up data, put that in for beginning of March next year. And our target data, we want to increase that by 5%. And the person responsible is me. And when we have everything filled out, we click the entry for this tab is complete and save. And just like on your interventions last month, that gets a check mark here. So when we come back to work on this, anytime we know exactly which tabs have been completed. So this was like, I just made stuff up. This is probably not the best example of evaluation data. But you know, with our little sample intervention, a lot of times what we see, powerful interventions are usually asking for teachers to change things that happen in the classroom. So it might be, you know, all teachers are using a different discipline method, or maybe it's just math teachers are teaching something differently. So we want to know, you know, how many teachers are doing this at the beginning, and then how many teachers do we expect to be doing it when we hit our evaluation date. But that's just the simple entry form for that. Be thoughtful with your evaluation data because it tells you how successful you're being. And, you know, if you really have this in place, or if we need to make changes in the future to get more teachers doing the thing we want them to do, or in this case, more parents doing the thing we want them to do. So that is our entry for evaluation, and we'll head back to our presentation. So next is the professional development. And our belief is that if you ask adults to do something they don't know how to do, you need to train them. And that can be true for any adult group, administrators, teachers. If you're wanting them to do something different, they almost always need to know how to do the thing. So in the professional development activity name, we want you to be clear and concise. The person responsible is the person who's going to make sure that this activity happens. They may not be doing all the work, but they're going to be checking on anybody else who's involved in making sure that the professional development activity is in place. Then we'll have the professional development targeted adult group. And again, we're remembering that this is the adult behavior that needs to be changed. So we're targeting adult groups. The professional development facilitator may be the person responsible or may not. We ask for a professional development level. Is this an introduction? Is it preparation, early use, or routine use? And so we're really just looking at how involved is this professional development? Are we just, introducing a concept, and then we'll follow up with more information? Are we preparing people to try it out? So if we're using a new teaching method, we might look at, just introducing the concept and maybe the research behind the new teaching method. In preparation, we would be giving our teachers the skills to actually do this new teaching method. For early use, we've asked the teachers to do it, and we're getting back together to see how did it go, what else, what kind of support do they need, just maybe even more advanced training. And then routine use is again, probably getting into more advanced training. It's making sure that everybody is continuing to do the thing the way we want them to do it, that we're not slipping or, getting kind of, I don't want to say lazy about it, but maybe not doing it to the degree to which we really want it done. So we might do professional development as people get into it being more of a routine, and making sure that we're staying on top of the way we want the practice to be. In the professional development activity description, we're not being clear and concise here. We're being wordy here. We want to know exactly what are we doing in this activity, and to describe, to really lay out what's happening. It's good to look at the primary learning style. Adults have learning styles too, so thinking about, are we always auditory? Are we bringing in visual? Are we bringing kinesthetic? To make our professional development more powerful, we want to think about those learning styles. And then professional development activity date. This could also be dates. So you want to set a date. If this activity is only happening once, then we just need one date. If it's something that's going to be recurring, let's say that we're doing an ongoing learning group that's going to meet every week, then we could put in multiple dates. And then we ask, will this professional development activity occur during contract hours? And then our anticipated result of the professional development. So what is it that we want the teachers or parents or community members, what do we want them to do as a result of being in this professional development?
Don't get caught up in the old sit and get way of thinking of professional development. Those days are gone as far as we'd like to think they're gone. I know that there's certain things that have to be that way, but you don't have to have that formal professional development where everybody gets their donut and their coffee and they sit down and start having to listen all the time. So be sure and use timely and practical professional development. Do action research. I've found that to be one of the most useful things that there is as far as doing professional development, where a teacher is a natural born learner. They're going to learn something new, and then you get to go out and you get to practice it. And then you are your own researcher. And so you gather the data, you come back together, and you talk about it. That is such good hands-on and very personalized for the building as well. Have in-school discussions. Of course, that goes along with your action research. There's all kinds of ways, and you really need to make it fit your environment, because we certainly all know that no professional development is one size fits all. You have to make it your own. And then you can always see the professional development planning guide, and that's on the BTA page. It's in section 7, step 2. So we do have that available for you. Your professional development rubric, this is what I'll be checking for. You want to make sure that professional development includes a series of activities which address the changing professional development strategies, stages. That professional development addresses a variety of the adults' learning styles. Remember, not all of us like to sit. So, make sure that there are different things going on. We're just like kids. We're humans, so we all have different learning styles. Professional development, for the most part, occurs during contact hours. You'll have a yes/no question on that. Of course, we understand it can't all, but we also know that, there again, you do your action research and all of that during the day. You're going to get a lot more done during those contract hours. And then always identify the person responsible so that no one drops the ball. And then the date. When are you going to have professional development? That needs to be identified. You may not be absolutely sure of that date, but go ahead and put it in. You can always change your calendar out later. But this is making a calendar for you at this time. So you want to be sure and not just leave everything blank right now. So go ahead, drop a date in, make yourself a note. I'm also going to be looking at the titles, clearly describing the activities. Don't make it abstract. There again, it's just like the interventions. We don't need anything fancy. Just tell it like it is. The description, very clear, very concise. Like Amy says, you can be wordy here. That's fine. Because remember, you're the one that's going to need to understand it in maybe a month. You're going to pick it up and get ready to go with it. So you want to make sure that you've left yourself enough information that you just pick right up where you left off. The description matches the identified implementation stage, that it matches the identified learning style, and then that the activity is likely to produce the anticipated results. You don't want to go to all this work and then, just have it flop. So put the thought into it now, and you'll be really glad you did, because then things will work much smoother. Then finally, you're going to have, and it's a big list that I always check for professional development. The titles include the format: presentation, workshop, small learning community. The introduction activities, and here again, you're going to have 4 stages. Some of you may go through all 4 stages in one professional development year. Some of you may go through 1, you may go through 2, that's up to you. But I'll look for and see at what level it's at. So is it introduction? Is it preparation? Is it early use? Is it routine use? And so you can see how all of those work. Introduction, prior. Preparation, prior. Early use, you've got it going. There again, that may be some of your first action research. And then your routine use after it's been implemented for a period of time. So we've pretty well covered all the bases there. And this will help you get a real clear-cut idea of what the staff needs to be doing as far as professional development. There shouldn't be too many gray areas on that.
We check professional development pretty rigorously because probably the biggest reason that interventions fail is because we don't do adequate training to make sure that the adults have the information and skills that they need to do the thing we've asked them to do. So that's one of those things that that's probably the area that we look at the most in depth, because we really want to make sure that our interventions are getting implemented fully and with integrity. And to do that, we really have to support the people who are going to be doing those new things. So, okay, let's look at the entry for professional development. We have a link here to the Professional Development Activity Planning Guide. We like to make sure that you have that at the ready, so it's right here. We also have a link to the Indiana State Board of Education's core professional development principles, just to make sure that we're meeting state expectations as well. But we've designed our form based on that. So as long as you're going along pretty close, you should have everything that you need. So let's say that we're setting up our professional development, and it's an introductory activity. So we want intro to new attendance policy, since that's our little intervention here. We'll say that the person responsible is Tina, and she's the person who's going to oversee this. She's not necessarily a person doing everything, but she's going to be responsible for overseeing this activity. The targeted adult group, in this case, is parents. Again, most of the time when we're getting those meaty interventions that really lead to student achievement, we're going to be looking at adults in our building. So that's usually teachers of some stripe. The facilitator in this case, we'll say, is also Tina. She's going to be the person doing our introduction. And we just click off introduction. If we were doing a professional development activity that was designed, let's say that we wanted to, something that we have started in the past and some of our teachers know about it, but we have a significant number of new teachers, or we're bringing, let's say that we started rolling this out with a specific grade level and we're adding another grade level to it this year, we might be looking at introduction and preparation. Just that isn't common, but we allow for it. So we do not expect to see, though, all 4 of these checked. And if we do see that, we'll probably call you out on it and say, this is supposed to be an intro. What's it got to do with routine use? So it's most likely that we'll see, introduction and preparation together. We might see, really, those are the 2 that we're most likely to see together in a really well-designed professional development program. So, but it's possible to check more than one. I just wanted to point that out if it's truly appropriate. So here's where we would put in our activity description. I'm not going to write a bunch of text, but you can see that's a good text box. And I do encourage you to be wordy here so that everybody knows what's going to happen in this and what the expectations are for it. So yeah, any notes that would be helpful to Tina, especially since she's the person responsible, make sure that those are in there. And again, go back and look at your rubric, and there are some expectations for what your description contains, so be clear on those. So in our intro activity, we'll say that our primary learning style is auditory, that it's mostly going to be Tina talking about this new policy we have. And we can add a date here. We'll say that we're doing this pretty early in our year. And let's say we have a makeup date for parents who couldn't make it on August 12th. That we'll do it also on August 14th. We can add as many dates as needed here. Will this professional development activity occur during contract hours? Since it's a parent thing, probably not. And then we put in our anticipated result of the professional development. So in this case, it could be something like, parents will come to this meeting, learn what they need to learn, and then they will, be informed of the new policy. If it's teachers, it could be that they've got an introduction, we've given them some things to read, that they're gonna start learning about this on their own, and they'll be talking about it with their department heads, or, so whatever your anticipated result is of this particular activity. And then click Save. So notice now, because I put in 2 dates, I've got August 12th and August 14th here. And then that was our introduction activity. And let's say that now we have a preparation activity. We just add another professional development activity and go through the form again, adding the dates, etc. And that'll show up on our grid here. So when we were talking about the rubric, we talked about we should see introduction activities come before preparation activities, which come before early use, which come before routine use. So this gives you a chance to check, and it'll be in date order so that you can see, are we doing everything in the proper sequence? And then if you need to make adjustments, you can do that. If you need to edit an activity, you click on the edit. And now let's say that I realized that the 14th is way too soon after that. Let's do it on the 21st and click Save. And now my date is updated. If I decided I didn't like the title of it, I could change that, whatever needs to be edited. I can also delete. So if something gets entered, if we decide, oh, we don't really need to do that activity, I can always go back and delete it. And when I'm finished and I have everything in place for this particular intervention, I'll click the entry for this tab is complete and save. There we go. We'll head back to our presentation.
Okay, now we're to part 3, resources. So now you're pretty much going to be doing cleanup. You've done lots of thinking with all of this, thinking it out. And so now you're going to do the basics. So what will you need to make this intervention happen? What kind of time, materials, meeting space, equipment? What's the plan for procuring resources? There again, this can make or break it, because if you don't have a place to meet or you don't have anything ready to go, it can be a disaster. So we're going to ask you what material or human resources are needed to support the implementation of the intervention. And in that, you'll want to fully describe the resources needed to implement the intervention, and then add links or suppliers. You're making your list. So we're giving you a spot where you can do your one list here in one place. So use it however you need to. Then always remember on your resource action plan, for each resource that will be needed, you're going to have a space that says task name, a person responsible, and a deadline. So for example, if you need to reserve a meeting room, purchase books, arrange time for professional activity, that's, you're going to have a task for each one of those. And then the person responsible for that task and the deadline. When is it needed? What's the drop dead date on this? So there again, be sure that you get your dates in as closely as you can. You can always change those out, but keep people on top of what's going on so that nothing comes as a surprise. So then in looking at the rubric, what I'm going to be looking for is that your adequate resources have been identified. A sound plan exists for obtaining the resources. If you say we're going to wish for them, I'm probably going to send it back. The person responsible has been identified and the date's been identified. And I will send these back if any of these are blank, because that's you just need a filler, if nothing else, because then you come back and there won't be holes in it. You will have someone in there and a date identified. And so that keeps you on task with it.
Well, let's go over and look at how we put that in. We're on our resources tab. So what material or human resources are needed to support the implementation of this intervention? We need meeting space. We need to announce meeting in plenty of time, handouts, presentation slides, snacks, water, say bottles of water, coffee. So whatever it is, you're making a good list here. And again, you can pop in links if we had, let's say we had a link to some information on what we based our new attendance policy on. Add that here so that our person, who's largely responsible for this, so that they have an idea of where this is. If we have just any notes that would be useful. And here's a little trick too. I know on Firefox, I can make this box bigger or smaller based on my needs, and I'm playing with that. Mostly I drag down. There we go. So if I need some space to describe this, I've got room to do it. And then we're going to put in tasks. So we put in our task name, our person responsible, and our deadline. So we actually want to get this in place sooner rather than later, we'll say. So ask for meeting space. Put our deadline in. And really we just want to add a task for everything that needs to be done. And I like to err on having, really thinking through and having a lot of tasks on this so that nothing is left to chance. In making sure that everything that's going to be needed for this to be successful, that it's going to be there. So and I think Tina's the same way. We really want to see, what resources and what are you going to do to get those resources in place. So whenever you have that list done and you feel like, you've made a good enough list that the people who are going to put this in place, and it could be, you might not know who the person responsible is yet. It could be that you're going to have, the person who was named as responsible for this intervention, that you need to sit down and talk with them and have them grab a team and set up who's going to help with this. So you might need, to put in a to be announced, but make sure that that is apparent so that when we go to do this, they know that, yeah, we've got to find somebody to do this task and this task. But make sure the list is good, even if you don't have necessarily all the people in place, and set some deadlines. It really helps people get the work done if they know exactly when you need to have it by. So we have all this entered. We click on the entry for this tab is complete and save. And now we've got another check mark in resources.
So now we're to number 4. How you gonna pay for this? So not everything has to have funding, but sometimes they do. And I saw some bottles of water and some snacks and all of that on there. And so there again, don't err on the side of not filling this out. Laundry listed half the pieces now, and then you can always back off later. So with your funding, what will you need to pay for any of the resources identified? What amount of funding is needed to support the implementation of this intervention? You put a dollar amount there again, can be a ballpark figure, but kind of, figure it out. Most of you probably have some smaller grants that you operate off of, and normally you'll probably know that down to the penny. So this may be the easiest part. How will this funding be used? So you're going to fully describe how the funding will be used. There again, not so much for my benefit, other than I can just see if it's, if I can see what you're talking about and understand it, then most everybody else should be able to too. And so we're not being nosy. We're just trying to make you be thorough with things. Your funding action plan, the tasks name, examples, apply for grant from community foundation, ask PTO for funding, send fundraising letters. It can be as broad as it is long. And then the person responsible, there again, assigning that person, and then what is the deadline? So you want to be sure and get that date in so that everything is taken care of before it gets too close to time for your PD. Also check that the intervention is adequately funded. On your funding rubric, the person I think I just did that, didn't I? No, I didn't. I think I may have, did I jump on that?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. Okay, on the funding rubric, what I'm going to be looking for is that the intervention is adequately funded, that the person responsible has been identified, and that a date has been identified. So there again, 3 basic things that need to help make it a success. So I'll be looking for those. If any of those are missing, I will send it back.
We'll look at the entry form for funding. It is very much like the entry form for resources, except it has a dollar amount. So when we looked at our resources, let's say, when we did this, we ideally wanted to have some snacks, some bottled water, some handouts. We're going to do a mailing. So we figure out how much we anticipate all that will cost. And let's say that it is $500. How will this funding be used? And then you want to say, we'll pay for this, we'll pay for that. However it is going to be used, just detail that. This can be useful as a start to the letters that you're going to write asking for funding or grant applications. It's just good to think about it in those terms. How are we going to use the money? And then our the funding action plan works just like the entry form for the resources action plan. We put in the task, the person responsible, and the deadline. And that'll build down here a little calendar for seeking funding. And we, don't put all your eggs in one basket is one of our tips there. Have a few places that you're going to ask for funding, because you might not be able to get it all from one person. If you do, great, then you don't have to go through everything else. But if the superintendent says, no, I don't have this in the budget, I can give you $50, but I'm not going to be able to find the full $500, then you've got several places that you can go. So when you're done, click the entry for this tab is complete and save, and you've got another check mark.
And finally, if you've exhausted everything else and you still have some spots that you need to fill in, we do have other. So on this one, just very basic. You have task name, what needs to be done, person responsible, and deadline or completion date. And so then, of course, on the rubric, I'm going to be looking at a person that's been identified and a date's been identified. So it just gets easier and easier because we're just cutting away, cutting away, cutting away. So now you're down to kind of the crumbs, but it'll look good and you'll be in good shape.
Yeah. And one of the other tasks that I often think of is publicizing this. So post on school Facebook page, and person responsible is probably the person who runs that page, and we set a deadline for it. We might also want to put a notice in the paper, since we've got parents we want to come to this. Oh, that keeps taking me back to evaluation. I will check on that and make sure that we have that fixed. But so just anything that wasn't covered under professional development resources or funding, you can put in that other. And again, it's just making sure that everything that needs to be done for this to be successful. We wanted to give you, that last spot. If we didn't cover it in those other tabs, you've got a place to put it in here. And when you're finished, when you've covered all your bases on this, entry is complete, and we save. And now I want to show you, when we come up here, we can select another intervention, but notice that next to our intervention we have a check mark, and that means that we've completed entry for this one. And at this point, because all of our tabs are completed, I might want to go ahead and submit. I might also want to open up the report and print that out and talk to maybe the rest of the steering team, or talk to the people who are involved and ask them, is there anything else you can think of? Did I miss anything that I need to put in here? Just have someone else, another set of eyes on it. If you feel like you're good to go, maybe you're the person who's going to be in charge of this, you can go ahead and click submit. And now when we come back here, our intervention, our preparation shows up as submitted.
Okay, always remember that if you find that you want to change the preparation tabs for any of your interventions, go to the initial setup and then make any needed changes.
Let me show you how to do that. So we have a couple of ways you can get there. And one of them is on this revise button. Let's say that new attendance policy, we decided it didn't need to have any of these tabs, and we had that at the very beginning. We click on that yellow icon, and that opens up the interventions edit. This is where we first set up our interventions, and it's going to go to the initial preparation tab, and that's because that's where these tabs are set. So we might want to remove all the check marks here because we decided this is something we've been doing. Let's say that it's one of those interventions that we've only put in our plan to meet external requirements, but it's something we've been doing for a really long time. Perhaps it's the highly qualified teachers requirement for Title I, or it's an attendance intervention that meets our Indiana rules and regulations, but it's something we've been doing for a long time and it's well in place. So we might not need to have any of these. Or maybe it's something that we realize we could do this for free. We could just remove the funding securement because we've got everything in place. It's going to be a freebie. And then we can click save. And now it's going to ask me if I want to return to the preparation. If I can also go to select another intervention. I probably don't want to do that, but I can return to where I started, or I get right back here with the preparation. So you'll notice that funding is now not on my tab. So this is probably something you want to do before you get started, but it could be something, you know, as you're working, you realize, oh, we really do have everything we need. We're not going to need funding for this. We also, if you're in here and you're editing and you decide to make a change, let's say we think about it and then so we do need funding, we can put that check mark back on, save, return to our intervention preparation, and now we have our funding tab back. We also didn't lose, I don't think I had anything, I don't think I entered anything in here earlier. I don't think you'll lose any work if you do that, but you know, be careful when you're working. Okay, so that's how we edit, and oh, let me go back to the process page and down to interventions. This is another thing, just like in your on your process page where we counted your interventions that you had entered and what their status was, we'll do the same thing in preparations. So right now we have one that has been submitted. Tina, if you wouldn't mind to review that real quick. While Tina does that, I'll do this slide. After all preparations have been entered, you need to confirm that that has happened. And let me, we'll go back to the process page. So just like in what you did last time, up in interventions on the preparations, you just come down to step 4, and you're confirming that all preparations have been entered. And we check. Your preparations will be listed here. And we hit confirm. Go back to the process page and scroll down. And now the status is confirmed in step 4. We also see that we have met criteria. And now, I don't know if you noticed before, but professional development summary is now available. But you'll see that our next task is not available until our professional development summary has met criteria.
So now we are ready for submitting the professional development summary, and this is what it's going to look like. Remember, we told you that it was doing all that work behind the scenes. So now you're going to get all these really neat charts. And so this is your professional development summary report. You see your intervention, and then you'll see your professional development titles. They'll be listed. The learning styles will be listed, whether or not it's during contract hours, the implementation dates, and then at what stage you are in the process. So this will be one of the forms that you will see that it has come up with through your input. And then what I look for there again, the professional development activities collectively create a culture of collegiality and collaboration. So there again, it's pretty broad, but at this point in time, hopefully we've gone through those steps of the process easily, thoroughly enough that by the time we hit this, then there's no questions. But it's just a safety check.
Yeah, and it's really to underscore that this is what you're aiming for, setting up your professional development program, is collegiality and collaboration. So after you've submitted your professional development summary and it's met criteria, you're going to seek local teacher association approval for the professional development summary. And that's just an important bit of support you need to have to make sure that this can happen. So make sure you're getting in touch. And then the next step is to distribute your preparation calendar. And this is so everybody knows what's expected of them. You especially want to distribute this to the people who are responsible for tasks. You don't want to leave anyone in the dark. So you'll notice we have the date, the intervention, the preparation area. So that could be the evaluation, resources, professional development, what the task is. And you'll notice you can have links and things here. And then the person who's responsible. So it might be a good idea if you want to make copies of this and maybe, circle names and, let people see this is where we plugged you in. And just so everybody's aware of what they're expected to do.
So then after all the submissions have met criteria, you're going to confirm your SIP completion, which will be one of the happiest days of your life. So what I'm looking for is that, and this is the absolute final step. So the SIP holds high promise for impacting the student achievement in the areas targeted by the SMART goals if all the interventions are fully implemented with integrity. So from our standpoint, you have built a nice SIP. It's up to you then to put all those into the implementation with integrity. And then based on ASA's third-party review, it appears that the school improvement plan meets the external expectations that you identified early on in the SIP uses of the SI2 school improvement management system at the beginning of the vision to action and school improvement process. That's a whole mouthful, but that is one of the first things that you checked to get the system set up so that it would serve that purpose. And then you'll notice an asterisk there, and that asterisk says something very important that you need to remember, that TSI and CSI schools will need to crosswalk requirements for the TSI and CSI manually. So remember, that's a separate document. And so that one you will do separately as a crosswalk. That we don't have that information on here. And then after the SIP completion has been reviewed, you're going to be able to develop a really nice looking PDF of this. So you're going to download your school improvement plan. Amy's going to show you how to do that. You'll click on the SIP archive in the left navigation bar. Then you will click on the date to download the SIP. And then you see two columns there, and I'm going to let Amy, she'll fill you in on that as far as reviewed by ASA or non-reviewed.
So let's go over the steps we just talked about. Tina, I'm going to submit this professional development summary. We'll say we've looked at it. Obviously, we didn't put much into ours. Yours will be much longer. I'll go ahead and submit that. And return to the process page. Now, so seeking our local teacher association approval for the professional development summary, you'll see that that is unavailable until Tina finishes the review and it meets criteria. And when she does that, then this will go into normal text like the rest of these.
Okay.
Okay, let me refresh. Okay, so now I have access to that report and I can print that out, and it'd be a good idea if that your local teacher association, if you don't have a member on your steering team, then you want to set up a meeting and maybe even take other pieces of the plan to sit down and talk about how we got to where we are and what our plan is, why we're asking for this time for professional development with our teachers, and also just show that we have a good plan, that we're not going to expect them to do anything that we haven't trained them to do. So that's another good reason to really be thorough with your professional development, so that they know they're not being put out on a limb in any way, that you haven't, also given them a ladder and a harness and anything else they need to feel secure in doing something new. So then our next step was to distribute the preparation calendar. Let's just report. We get in here and we see the things we've entered for that. And then our last one is to confirm our SI, or well, we have our rubric items. That's not quite at the bottom like normal, but you can look those over anytime. And remember that we have this link to the individual intervention criteria. You can always get here. That gives you all of the criteria that Tina will be looking for as you submit those individual preparations, and then the rest of the criteria. Okay, so, and then number 9 is confirm our SIP completion. So this says unavailable until all other submissions, including interventions and preparations, have met criteria. So we have missed something on here. Let me see if I can find it. Tina, if you see it, holler. Oh, here we go. We have a steering team discussion summary that didn't get submitted. And let me see if there's anything else we might have missed. That's all. So if we've missed something like that, and hopefully not, I know Tina sends you out friendly reminders to let you know if there's any outstanding work. If you've kept up on that and you know got on track, then you'll have those. Okay, so our last submission met criteria, and now in step 9 we can submit our SIP completion. So I will do that and go back to our process page. We see that that's submitted. Tina, do you want to review that real quick?
On my way.
So next time I log in after Tina has done this, I will see balloons. We love our balloons. And that lets me, yes, happy balloons. And that lets us know that's our celebration, that we have got our school improvement plan approved, that it's all done. We've completed this whole process. That's worthy of celebration in our minds. So we hope it's a good moment for you guys too. This also means that now we can download the school improvement plan, and you can get here a couple ways. Either scroll down to the bottom or over here anytime you log into the system. Our SIP archive is over here. And so we have, oh, this is letting us know that since Tina just reviewed this plan, it's ready soon. It takes a little bit for those plans to get generated. And that's just our system has to collate all that and put together and create your PDF. So if you happen to get here right after Tina has done that final review, it could take a little bit. But I did want to mention that we do have this link to generate a new PDF. The one that Tina has reviewed will be in this first column, reviewed by ASA. If for some reason, let's say that you take your PDF to your superintendent and your superintendent needs you to make changes, that they want to put in a district-wide intervention, or I don't know, that there are other changes that they need you to do before they can sign off, and you need to make those changes, go ahead and do that. Or if something else comes up, we decided we need, we had some other ideas. When we talked to our teacher association, they wanted to make sure we had some more activities for kinesthetic learners, or whatever it is. If you need to make changes and generate a new PDF, you can come back here anytime and click on this generate a new PDF. And then that will appear over here in the non-reviewed column. And so if you need to do that a couple of times as you're talking to people and making sure that you have support for your plan, just generate a new PDF. You'll want to download it, because anytime you generate a new PDF, it's going to replace the one that was there before it. But we give you that option just in case that you need it.
Don't resubmit to me.
Yeah, that you don't have to resubmit to Tina if people are asking for changes. If it's something major and you want to talk to Tina and make sure that you haven't done anything that's going to mess you up down the road, Let's say that your superintendent wants you to set all new goals. That's kind of a big deal. You might want to check in. I don't think it's ever happened before, but if it feels like something big or fundamental and you want to check in, send an email, give her a call, but yeah, you wouldn't need to go back and resubmit everything for review.
Happy to discuss it, just don't need to resubmit it.
Yeah.
It is extremely important to keep these things in mind. The SIP belongs to everyone and needs everyone to support it and to know what their responsibilities concerning its implementation are. So make sure, talk about it. Talk this up, put it on the front burner, make sure everybody knows what's going on. The success of your plan depends upon you sharing it with the staff and any other stakeholder. So if there are other people involved, make sure you share it and that they understand. Be ready to answer questions and concerns. There may be some even terminology that people outside the school don't quite understand. Be patient because we do have some interesting acronyms out there. So be sure and fill them in on any questions or concerns. And then make sure that everyone knows that your faculty, community, and students will be involved in editing the next SIP. This one you did as a committee, as a steering team. But from now on out, it will be everybody involved. And I think you'll find that, this was your learning year. And it's good that you learn kind of in isolation. But I think you're really going to enjoy sharing this with everybody and all your hard work and then seeing how it plays out in years to come. And just kind of a quick side story on those balloons. We have schools that have been in this for over 20 years. And they call me and say, I've got balloons. I mean, they get so happy because they know all the hard work that goes into this and they know what a good plan that they've done and they've done good work. And so just this little gesture, you don't get those unless everything turns out okay. And so, that is important to celebrate because there's a lot of work involved in that and a lot of teamwork. And so we really like to see that because that's what's going to keep our kids going.
Absolutely. As always, if you need help, please get in touch. Things are pretty busy this time of year, and Tina is on the phone quite a bit. So sometimes email so that you're not playing phone tag. Sometimes email can be a lot more efficient, or can help you just set up a time to, like, an appointment for a call if a call is needed. But it's definitely not the time to be shy. It's the home stretch.
And email right now is your best friend because if I have a school that is a startup or not a startup school that for whatever reason is lagging behind, those phone calls get really drug out because they've got X amount of time and they've got to get a lot of information in on a phone call and 5 minutes won't do it. So if you will just keep that email going, I can multitask sometimes a lot easier. I can glance at it on the weekends and I can, or at night or whatever, and I can get you an answer back then that I might not be able to reach you otherwise. So use email as your first line of defense. And then if you need to call, that's fine. And like Amy said, we can always use the email to make a time for you to call. So that would be my suggestion at this point.
So this being our last webinar, we want to thank you so much for being a part of SI2 this year. You all have been just great to have, and we hope that you'll join us for SI2 next year. Be looking for email about getting enrolled for the coming year.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and this is the part that is my treat because I get to be the teacher again. I always have loved teaching, so it's, I learn a lot from you too. So just keep it up, and boy, I sure hope we see you next year. And keep in touch in the meantime.